everyone, welcome back to Hazel's Flight School, Spirits Edition. I'm Lily Margolis.
And I'm Maximilian Girardin.
And today we're talking about rum.
Yeah, so let's start out with, what do you know about rum?
That pirates drink it, and it goes in a pina colada, and that's about it.
Heck yeah. So, the key thing to bear in mind with all rum is essentially that just like whiskey is made from a distillate of fermented grain, and brandy is made from a distillate of fermented fruits.
Oh.
Corn is a grain. Rum is made from a distillate of fermented sugar, and that can be sugar in pretty much any form. There's some beet sugar rums out there. There's ones where it's just fresh pressed cane juice, and then there's the most common form of rum where it's a molasses or a byproduct of the sugar making process that they are then fermenting and distilling. So a lot of the differences between rums are what stage of the sugar making process they're starting with as a base, and then the fermentation and distillation and whether they barrel age it or not from there. So first on the line, we've got Planteray, formerly known as Plantation. About 5 years ago, Pierre Ferrand, who owns this whole line of spirits, made a pledge to change the name of their bottles to be slightly less problematic than Plantation, and they changed it over to Planteray. So if you see the Plantation bottles out there, it's just older stock, and eventually it'll all get switched over. But we've got the new stuff because we sell a lot of it here. This is Planteray 3-Star, and it is a blend of 3 different islands of rum.
Does islands mean literal, physical islands?
Yes, that's right. Barbados, Trinidad, and Jamaica. And one of the frustrating things about rum as a category is that unlike single malt scotch or cognac, there's a very frustrating lack of rules, and it's pretty much totally opaque what actually ends up in the bottle. So Ferrand doesn't actually own most of the distilleries who produce the rums that they make. They are buying lots of barrels from all different sources and then bringing them back home to France and finishing them in their own casks in their own way and making blends. Which is why this is 3 different islands, and each island kind of has their own style, which is, the terroir of where you're getting your rum from. So let's try this out. I want to see what you think. Anything pop out for you?
Honestly, it has more of a punch than I thought it was going to, just based on the fact that rum is basically distilled sugar. I thought it was going to be a lot sweeter than it is.
Sure.
And as that has been my experience with rum, I was a little surprised.
Absolutely, yeah.
But some good notes of vanilla, some coconut. I think that's pretty classic rum.
Yeah. So this is a favorite for mojitos, for pretty much every classic rum cocktail for me. It's pretty affordable on the shelf. They're all under around $20. And for me, what this does better than a lot of rums in its price category is it's got a lot of flavor without being too strong or overpowering. Mm-hmm. We'll get to the strong and overpowering stuff. Next up, we have a rum from the Isle of Fiji. This is actually a pretty cool treat. It's not very many rums that come from that tiny, tiny island. So where this was a blend of Caribbean rums, Fiji is nowhere near the Caribbean, and they are making a totally different style. So I want you to try it out and see, just call out any kind of big difference. Even on the nose, it should smell very different. Yeah. And with Fiji rums, they're doing their own sugarcane for this. So it's not sugarcane that they're buying from anywhere else. They're growing it there on the island. Just like in wine, the terroir of where your agricultural product that you're getting sugar from, where it grows, will totally influence its end flavor, depending on how you treat the stuff. But what do you get?
It kind of smells a little bit like toasted almonds. I feel like there's a little bit more of a nutty scent to this than this white rum here. It seems like a little more concentrated, a little more developed. I think on the nose you can tell that this is from one place, and that this is a blend. There seems to be more intention. with
Yes,
this.
yeah, I totally agree with that. This is definitely something where they're highlighting like a single style as opposed to a blend of multiple different styles and balance. And that's pretty cool. One of the things that we forgot to mention about the white rum is that this is a barrel-aged product. In fact, all of these are barrel-aged products. The reason that this is clear and the rest of these are brown like you would expect anything that comes from a barrel to be is they do a kind of active filtration with charcoal basically, and it leaches out all the color. So this was at one point something brown like this, and they sucked that all out, and that's kind of really the industry standard for rum. White rums are still barrel aged with very, very few exceptions.
Does rum have to be barrel aged to be considered rum?
No, unfortunately, there is very, very little codification or rules for what constitutes a rum. Pretty much what we're at is it's a distillate of fermented sugar.
Yeah. So
That's
steel aged would be fine.
Yep.
And it would still be rum.
Yep, and there are some people doing a just non-barrel aged rum. None of them are here, but there's a couple of rum agricoles from the Isle of Martinique. Those guys have set down some very serious and strict rules that they follow, probably just because they're a colony from a French colony and they were doing things in the practice that they do for champagne and they do for cognac, and so it kind of followed that they would continue to follow rules and lay down rules. Did you taste this one yet?
I've not tried it.
This is one of my favorite rums that we sell. Got it for like $30 on the shelf, and it's just utterly unique, very sippable, and very much kind of its own flavor profile. Anything in particular stand out?
I kind of noticed some like orange peel, orange pit stuff going on here.
Totally.
Very different from the white rum. I still feel like you're getting some classic like vanilla. I'm getting toasted almond on the palate too, like I was on the nose, but they're totally different styles.
Yeah, for me, I always pull out a lot of tropical fruits on this one as well, like an almost a sour like passion fruit and pineapple thing, but it's just in there with all the rest of the rum. It's really cool stuff. All right, so moving on, we are going to talk about Xaymaca. This is from Jamaican distilleries. I believe it's a blend of pot still, 100% pot still style rum. So the Jamaicans do a totally wild, different thing that pretty much no one else is doing, although now with kind of the craft spirit renaissance, other people are imitating it all around the world. They make a style of rum using something called dunder. And dunder is a really just strange thing. They basically dig a pit in the jungle and they chuck sugarcane in there, kitchen scraps, and they just let wild yeast come on by and ferment it. All sorts of fruit scraps, wild animals fall in there, all sorts of things.
So it's not vegan.
Well, I don't know. It's a distilled product, so it could be. I don't know. They don't intentionally throw meat in there, but if something falls in there, yeah, we get bad on the vegan stuff with spirits. Anyways, with dunder, they let this fermentation happen spontaneously and out in the jungle in the wild, and it's just loaded with bacteria, like really, really bad stuff. If you put your head too close to this while it was fermenting, you would pass out and probably fall in.
And then you would be part of the rum.
And then you would be part of the dunder, get a really good like flavor profile. Now, remember, this is after it's been distilled, right? That we're consuming this stuff, which makes it okay. Generally, what the Jamaicans are doing is not 100% a dunder, where they're taking that fermented stuff and pitching it into a still. They're usually doing some kind of blend of both clean fermented sugarcane or molasses and then dunder fermented. And depending on how much of the dunder they're using and other distillation practices, you can end up with a really robust style of rum. And that's because those bacteria that are in there in that crazy wild fermentation are bringing in all sorts of different flavor profiles and big fatty acids and esters that give you really funky stuff. So when I first tried rum, I was like, really? This is rum? Like, this is what pirates were drinking? And then I tried a Jamaican rum and I was like, oh, yeah, this is definitely what Jack Sparrow was drinking.
Smells very different.
Right? Any notes in particular on the nose?
More tropical fruit for me
Mm-hmm.
than the past two.
Yeah. Yeah, I always picture this being in one of those like woven big thick glass bottles, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But Jamaican rums are perfect for making the fruitier of the rum cocktails just because they're a bit drier in their style and they're super robust in flavor. This in a punch or this in a daiquiri would really punch up your daiquiri and punch. It's really good stuff. Any tasting notes on there?
Just very intense, like tropical fruits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like we've gone tropical, like less to more so far.
Yeah.
Like this, yeah, you can really taste it in this one.
And this next one is going to knock your socks off. So let's get going.
So when I went to the Bahamas, is this what I was drinking in the pina coladas I got there? Possibly.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that too, because basically in the rum industry, because there's such a lack of any kind of rules, strict rules for the production, just because you buy something that says Jamaican rum doesn't mean that there's not some rum from Panama and Guyana and other places also blended into it. They're pretty free with their barrel trading. They're pretty free with adding sweeteners after it's been in a barrel. They're pretty free with adding caramel color sometimes as well. Pierre Ferrand doesn't really do very much of that, if at all. I'm sure they do a bit of back sweetening on a couple of their dark rums, but with ones where they're trying to highlight a specific island and the terroir of that island, I'm pretty sure they leave it just as is to really highlight what the style of that island is.
Because there's not a lot of regulation around rum, can you make rum like in Colorado? Like, can we have Colorado rum?
We actually have a couple of Colorado rums right now. There's a particularly famous one called Montana. Shout out to Montana Rums. You're doing a great job up there. And she's really lovely. She's up in northern Colorado. She's an entrepreneur, and she's doing stylistically something much, much closer to this, where it's drier, less fruit notes, much more about the brown sugar, molasses, and that kind of style. Yeah. All right. So next we have the Planteray OFTD, which they say stands for Old Fashioned Traditional Dark, but the makers of it have also declared, oh, that's delicious. And that is what's on their website. I'm just quoting them. This is Overproof Rum, and there are a lot of really classic tiki cocktails that require you to have, you ever hear like Caribou Lou 151 rum? They're referring to the proof on that rum. This isn't quite up at 151 proof. It's at 69.5% alcohol by volume, which brings it to what proof?
130?
Close.
130.
It's closer to 140.
140.
Yeah, because 69. But yeah, so this is really, really high proof stuff. And it was brought up to us, when you're smelling something super high proof, your first instinct is like, oh, snap, that's really strong stuff.
Yeah.
If you keep your mouth partway open as you bury your nose in the glass, you'll find that it's much less likely to make you want to cough it out or be such a sharp hit to the back of your nose and tasting.
Yeah, that's a good tip, because usually when I smell spirits, it makes me need to sneeze.
Yeah.
So.
And any tasting notes on this one? This is some really cool stuff.
It is just like so rich. It almost smells like fermented fruit.
Sure.
Like more so like kind of like a jelly, like strawberry jelly, raspberry jelly.
Oh yeah, like definitely got a lot of those fruit preserves notes out of it. Yeah, that's cool. But yeah, that'll warm you up. I'm just gonna go for all the high proof stuff for the future of all of these. We're gonna have Lily go through some hazmat bottles.
It's really good, but it burns.
That's a really good way to sum it up. It is really good, but it burns. Now, unless you're, a professional who drinks way too much like me, drinking something at 69% alcohol by volume neat and in a glass is going to make your eyes tear up like poor Lily is over here.
Should have watered my rum.
Yeah, but you can add water to this if you want to try it that way. The thing to bear in mind with this one in particular is this really isn't made to be just on its own. This is really made to be a cocktail workhorse. It's supposed to be in all sorts of classic tiki cocktail drinks, and it's made perfectly for that. It'll really stand up in cocktails that have many other spirits in them. So lots of punches. One of my favorite ones I've used this rum for, and it's a bottle of bourbon, a bottle of this rum, and a bottle of cognac, and 3 bottles of champagne. And so the fact that you can still taste the rum after you make Chatham Artillery Punch is kind of nuts.
What about a Mai Tai?
This would be great in a Mai Tai, but you would have to have also, because a Mai Tai is white rum, dark rum, curacao, and lime juice, and almond syrup or orgeat. This will overpower pretty much everything else unless you also have them at a very high proof.
Gotcha.
So if you have an overproof white rum, that would go really good with this. Yeah.
I was wondering if there's any particular reason that we went left to right and started with lighter and with darker.
Yeah, usually when you taste professionally, you would start with the unaged stuff and move to the aged stuff, because rum in general is all aged, even if it looks like it isn't. The reason we did it in this order is because I know which the strongest flavor profiles are and which the weakest ones are. And part of that is informed by proof. So we ended with one that's 70%, because if we try this one after that, it's going to taste like water, which is great, but dangerous. But so in order of robustness of flavor is the best way to taste through things, with a couple exceptions. Sometimes you have a really soft, peaty scotch, but if you taste that before you taste all of your big, bold, sherried scotches, you're still going to get that peat, because the peat really lingers on the palate. Yeah.
And then I know we also talked about how this white rum it's still aged, but it's basically been filtered, so that's why it's colorless.
Yes.
And that's the opposite of whiskey, basically, which gains its color from barrel contact. So it's bringing in those colors
Right.
from the wood itself. So this is kind of like the opposite process, because it starts with color.
Right. Well, I mean, it doesn't just start with color. Off the still, it's still clear like this. And then they put it in a barrel, and it gains that color, and then they put it through a filter and strip that color out.
Okay.
But you still have some of the components of what a mature rum or mature spirit tastes like. There's still some oaky profiles, those vanilla notes, those all come from oak. Just straight sugarcane distilled is actually pretty dry. It doesn't have that much of a kind of potent flavor. It's the barrel aging that brings it in there.
So is this more of like an aesthetic purpose in a way?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the origin of doing the filtered rum is. That's a really good question that I should have read before we filmed this.
Yeah.
But so what I would guess is that yes, part of it is just that it's a cosmetic. Because when you make a mojito, using a dark rum makes a kind of ugly brown drink, but when you use a white rum, you've got a nice translucent, crisp, and refreshing fruity drink. So anyways, that's a basic rundown of rum, a really good introduction from multiple different styles. Thank you very much to Jason Hodosi of European Wine and Spirits, and to House Ferrand for supplying these rums for us to try. It's a really great book that I love recommending to people.
Thanks for flying with us today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and ask your questions in the comments.
This episode's trivia question is, which one of these rums contains dunder?